What is Remembrance Day? Remembrance Day helps us to remember what happened during World War One. It was a terrible war and millions of people died or were injured. We remember those soldiers who fought and died for their country, and the fact that some of those soldiers were as young as 17 and sometimes even younger. Over 250,000 soldiers under the age of 19 signed up for World War I. Many were commended for their heroic acts, though for some this was after their death. Others, like A.B. Baverstein, rushed to sign up for an adventure that would take him overseas. He was born in Russian-occupied Poland in 1898 and came to London when he was 3. And in September 1914 he volunteered, changing his name to the English Harris. Soon after his arrival in France, A.B. discovered the wretched nature of trench warfare, and he wrote home, "Dear Mother, I do not like the trenches. We're going in again this week." For A.B., and many like him, the trenches were meant cold and mud, wet clothes and rats, the smell of death, long monotonous hours interrupted by terror. On the 29th of December 1915, A.B. was caught in a German mine explosion. He was wounded and suffered what was then called shock. In today's military words, it would be described as post-traumatic stress disorder. By early spring, A.B. was back on the front. On the 12th of February 1916, the Germans again attacked. Suffering from shock, A.B. wandered back and forth along the British lines. He was eventually arrested and charged with desertion. And in his last letter home, it's a boy who's determined to underplay his situation and not to put stress on his mother. "Dear Mother, I'm in the trenches and I was ill. So I went out and they took me to the prison, and I'm in a bit of trouble now." Those who survived the trenches and came home brought memories that retain the power to haunt until the end of their lives. World War I was also called the Great War. This war took place in Belgium, France, Africa and the Middle East, and the total military and civilian deaths was around 40 million. It only came to an end by an agreement between the Allies and the Germans to cease fire. This became known as the Armistice. And the Armistice was signed on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, 1918. And this is the reason Remembrance Day can also be called Armistice Day. So why do we wear poppies? Well, poppies grew on the graves of soldiers in the fields of France, and wearing poppies helps us show our respect for those who've died. The red colour reminds us of the blood that is shed during war times when soldiers are in combat. And in Britain we buy poppies to raise money for charities, and this money goes towards helping wounded soldiers and their families. On Remembrance Day, we spend time remembering the soldiers who died during World War I and other wars and conflicts. And we also think about the soldiers who are stationed now in war zones all around the world. We lay wreaths and crosses and wear poppies as a mark of respect. On November the 11th each year, we also have a 2-minute silence at 11 o'clock. Many towns have a parade to show they remember, and this usually ends at a war memorial or cenotaph. There is a cenotaph in Whitehall, London, where the Queen and other people pay their respects. As we continue our reflection, we are going to listen to 2 poems read by Mrs. Fox and Mrs. Kennar, written by men who fought in the Great War. As we listen, think about how these men, who like so many, fought in a war that they played no part in starting. They fought thousands of miles from home and in the most horrific of conditions. The Kohima epitaph is usually recited at the end of the remembrance service. I think, however, it is fitting that we reflect on it now. When you go home, tell them of us and say, for your tomorrow, we gave our today.
We are the lost who lived and loved. We felt the dawns or sunsets glow. For now we lie in road in Flanders
John McCrae wrote the poem In Flanders Field, which inspired the use of the poppy as a symbol of remembrance. In the spring of 1915, shortly after losing a friend in Ypres, a Canadian doctor, Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae, wrote his now famous poem after seeing poppies growing in battle-scarred fields. In Flanders Fields. In Flanders fields the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw the torch, be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders field.
I Have a Rendezvous with Death by Alan Seeger. I have a rendezvous with death at some disputed barricade. When spring comes back with rustling shade and apple blossoms fill the air, I have a rendezvous with death when spring brings back blue days and fair. It may be he shall take my hand and lead me into his dark land and close my eyes and quench my breath. It may be I shall pass him still. I have a rendezvous with death on some scarred slope of battered hill when spring comes round again this year and the first meadow flowers appear. God knows 'twere better to be deep pillowed in silk and scented down, where love throbs out in blissful sleep, pulse nigh to pulse and breath to breath, where hushed wakenings are dear. But I've a rendezvous with death at midnight in some flaming town, when spring trips north again this year, and I to my pledged word am true, I shall not fail that rendezvous.
As part of the act of remembrance, Mr. Gilberthorpe will read the exhortation, and this will be followed by the playing of the last post. The history of the last post lies in the fact that the bugle was played to mark the fact that the perimeter of the army camp was secure for the night. It is now played as a mark of respect and remembrance for all the soldiers, like Aby, who have given their lives for their country. We now mark the fact that they are at peace. They are home now. At the end of the last post, there'll be a 2-minute silence to remember everyone around the world who has died in conflict. The sounding of the reveille will mark the end of this assembly of remembrance.
They shall not grow old like we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning we will remember them.